Today's video was initially planned to be something else. I had already created the video. I was in the final stages of putting a few touches on it and rendering it, and then this news came out. And this is far more important than discussing Kathleen Kennedy or anything like that. This is discussing the financials and the failure of The Last Jedi in great detail. A good friend of the show, Brian Lape, sent me this image over on our Facebook page. And I'm going to pull it up for you, and I'm going to read it to you because it's very interesting and very telling about the state of Disney's Star Wars. Here's the image. So you think The Last Jedi was a financial success because it made $1.3 billion. Think again. Time to learn how money works. Now, before I get into this anymore, I'm just going to be using this, and then at the end, I'll give my take on a few other things. So, let's do this cleverly and with maths. Disney bought Star Wars for $4.05 billion. This is what needs to be considered. But Star Wars doesn't just become successful as soon as Disney makes more than that in profits. They have to make that money and the equivalent interest. Film production is a business dealing with billions of dollars. Any idiot, most even, with money, can invest their money in banks, stocks, and under a financial advisor, make a steady profit. Choosing to invest money in film is because you believe that you can make more money by doing so. Then it goes to quote an article from smartmoneynation.com, and it says, from 1926 to 2015, the S&P 500 index returned an average of about 10% per year. But let's be nice. We need to show how utterly and completely The Last Jedi shit the bed, not how it fell low of optimal numbers. So let's say that 5% is the return one should easily be able to expect each year. Thus, we can now say that Disney Star Wars is a success, if it makes more than the equivalent safe investments, 5%. Let's use a 10-year guide for the sake of an example. So let's do the math. Spending $4 billion on Star Wars versus a very low rate of return investment on that same money. So here's the list. I'm not going to read you every category, but as you can see, you start out with the $4.05 billion, and after 10 years you get $6.59 billion. After 10 years, a 5% return on $4.05 billion becomes $6.59 billion. Divide that by 10 and we get an average of $659 million a year. This means that for Disney Star Wars to be a successful investment, it has to make more than $659 million in profit each year. Now, we can't get clear numbers on merchandise, but we have articles like this, and they talk about the Forbes article with the Star Wars Disney. Now, if you're a longtime listener of this show, we've discussed how Star Wars toys are down 21% in terms of profits. And as you can go out into any store and see clearly, Star Wars merchandise floods the shelf. And it's not that it's just a bunch of new stuff that people haven't bought. There's a lot of old stuff from almost 3 years ago at this point. And now we can't know what percentage of the total Disney makes from the merchandise. Therefore, we're going to focus solely on the films. Here comes the fun part. The Last Jedi had a budget of $225 million. This doesn't include all of its advertising budget. If we lowball, the standard model is to spend the equivalent of a film's production budget on its advertising. A 2014 article stating that Blockbuster spent an average of $200 million on marketing per film, from The Hollywood Reporter. The Last Jedi spent a lot more on advertising than a random 2014 Blockbuster, so let's assume they spent $225 million marketing for a combined total of $450 million. Okay, so The Last Jedi cost $450 million. That's so major when it made $1.3 billion, I hear you sarcastically say. Well, now let's look at that $1.3 billion that it made at the box office. And they quote Scott Mendelson, our favorite Star Wars shill. We'll have to give Star Wars 65% of the overall ticket sales and promise to keep the films in the biggest theaters for at least 4 weeks, and that's only domestic. Internationally, studios tend to get 30% of the film's box office. But this is Disney, so let's be nice and assume 45%. That same article points out how films normally get that domestically. So let's look at the box office once again of The Last Jedi's $1.3 billion. We get a breakdown of $614 million domestically versus the $706 internationally. 65% of $614 million is $399.1 million. 45% of $706 million is $317.7 million. So out of the $1.3 billion at the box office The Last Jedi made, Disney got only $399.1 million plus an additional $317.7 million, which is a total of $716.8 million, considerably less than the $1.3 billion. Now, from the money Disney made, we take away its production costs, which we earlier estimated at $450 million, to see what their profit was. $716.8 million minus $450 million for a grand total of $266.8 million in profit. If you remember, above we looked at how much Star Wars needs to make each year to be successful against a 5% rate of return, a low estimate, on a $4 billion investment. We found it needed to make $659 million each year to be considered a success. Star Wars The Last Jedi, after all costs are calculated, made about $266.8 million. Math shows us very clearly how The Last Jedi was a gigantic failure. And I didn't even get into the ever-falling conservative estimates of what every article expected the film to make. Well, if this math is to be believed, and numbers don't lie, it looks like Star Wars The Last Jedi is the failure that people have cited it being creatively, and now financially it doesn't look too good. Now yes, to be 100% clear and transparent, they don't have the numbers for the merchandise. But as we have covered at great length here on World Class Bullshitters, the toy sales, which is the huge majority of the merchandise sales, are down 21%. So we can assume that they're frantically scrambling, at least in that regard. It's like, what are we doing? What do we got to do? Well, you got to make better product. And that goes for the movies and the merchandise. So if we really look at this and break it down, all is not well in the land of milk and honey and Star Wars. The media tries to tell us that it's great. All these people like Scott Mendelson try to spin it and shill out for Disney. You got your guys over at Midnight's Edge and Mundane Matt and all those guys telling you, oh, it's really so great and the book is what makes it better and blah, 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 blah. But numbers aren't opinions. Numbers are cold, hard facts. And what we have, based on just the box office, goes to show you that Star Wars didn't perform as well as they expected it to. Because we know that this one made $750 million less than The Force Awakens. And the climate, the way Star Wars has been received as of late, you can conservatively estimate that the next one will make less. I know everyone likes to use the example, but it's the middle movie that always makes the least amount of money at the box office and then it's going to bounce back. The middle movie in The Empire Strikes Back, the movie was awesome and you couldn't wait to find out what happened next. With this movie, I don't give a shit what happens next. What's the plan? What's the big payoff in the finale? Rey is going to defeat Kylo Ren. She already beat Kylo Ren. Somebody's going to come back from the past? Well, I love Lando as much as the next guy, but Billy D. Williams isn't going to bring in $1 billion in revenue. Harrison Ford's been killed off. Mark Hamill's been killed off. Carrie Fisher's actually dead in real life. So where's the big draw at the end of it? You don't have modern characters that have a strong enough following. Rey is no one's favorite character. Kylo Ren is no one's favorite villain. Poe Dameron and Finn are just jokes in the background. You got Potato Sack Tico over here that can't sell a fucking toy to save her life. You have created a situation for yourself where you can't win. Solo is not going to be a hit. Solo will make money, but Solo will not make its money the way people expect it to because it has the word Star Wars over it. We are at a point now in time where the word Star Wars doesn't guarantee success. With The Force Awakens, it worked. You duped everybody. With this last one, it didn't work. You got a shit score on Rotten Tomatoes. And now you go to find out that it really didn't make as much as everyone would like you to believe it made. So people have seen the man behind the curtain, and Oz the Great and Powerful is just that crazy old dude with a shitty mustache from the door. And there's really not a big way to spin this. The numbers, like I said, you can't really spin the numbers. Everyone goes to tout, $1.3 billion at the box office. That deserves an asterisk next to it because, yeah, $1.3 billion was made, but Disney didn't make $1.3 billion. And we know like I said, we know the merchandise is down. And even stuff like Battlefront 2 has not delivered the same way as they expected. So I think companies in general and movie theater chains and places that would license out Star Wars need to wake up or will wake up, and they won't be strong-armed into any of these demands anymore. Like I said earlier in the video, the name Star Wars does not carry the same weight that it used to. It has the nostalgia, but businesses aren't actually run on nostalgia. Businesses sell to you through nostalgia. So while we may think, Star Wars is, forever and all this crap, if it makes less and less each time, from a business standpoint, it's going to be done soon. And you know what? If George Lucas was still around, he'd understand it was time to let it rest. So that's it for today's video. As I said, this wasn't initially planned, but sometimes you gotta just throw those plans aside and talk about something that's really relevant. And this information that just came to my attention, and it's really relevant to me, and I'm sure it will be really relevant to you because it gives people that dislike The Last Jedi another piece of ammunition. I can tell you some of the debates I've had with fans, and people are like, but it made $1.3 billion. Well, now we know it made roughly, it roughly made about $266.8 million, and no one goes around and touts that that's a huge success. So tell me what you guys think. Are you going to laugh, or do you care? Are you going to rub it in people's faces? It's nice to know as a fan, as a real fan, and yeah, I'm going to use that phrase as a real fan. It's good to know that the people that are bastardizing Star Wars aren't getting away with it. They're not going to be taking bags and bags and bags of money home. Just one bag, this big, this wide, filled to the brim with money. And that's about it. That dump truck of money that Star Wars used to be able to demand, well, it's out of gas and no one's really worried about it anyway. So thank you for watching. If you're a fan of this channel, please give this video a thumbs up and share it. If you haven't already, join our Facebook pages. It's a great place to interact with a lot of people. We've grown at a crazy rate as of late, and it's awesome. It's a lot of fun. That's how I got this information from our good friend Brian Lape. Other people share stuff. There's games. There's ways to get shout-outs. It's a great place to discuss pop culture without the stupidity of modern fandom. If you're a super fan of World Class Bullshitters, make sure you join our Patreon page. For just $1 a month, you get access to all kinds of exclusive content. And if you join at the $5 a month level, which is 17 cents a day, and those numbers don't lie, you get tons more content than an entertainment value than you could get from The Last Jedi. You get a digital poster, you get a World Class Bullshitters special called After Hours, where each week after the podcast airs, we give you an extra 30 to 40 minutes of us. We talk about movies, we talk about life, we talk about entertainment-related stuff, but we're a little more raw and uncut over there because there are no restrictions like there are over here on YouTube. So if you want the full World Class Bullshitters, the podcast experience, Patreon.com/WorldClassBS is the only place to get World Class Bullshitters After Hours. And while you're at it, do us a favor and check out the links down in the description below. We got the Pharaoh Kane Kickstarter page, and Pharaoh Kane's a great comic book producer. You get some of the coolest crossovers in entertainment, fantasy, high action, science fiction, all that stuff is great. If you pine for the old days of entertainment like we do, even though we're still in our 20s for the most part, make sure you check out the Rated R audiobook, link in the description below. It's a throwback to 80s and 90s action flicks. It's a lot of fun. It's raw, intense, and you'll do yourself a favor by reading or listening to that over The Last Jedi's novelization and trying to pick apart the little intricacies, because trust me, I've read it. It sucks. And finally, if you like money and you don't want to fall victim to some of the follies that Disney fell to with Star Wars The Last Jedi, do yourselves a favor and go pick up a copy of Bachelor Pad Economics by Aaron Clary. It's a fantastic read. It's really the ultimate guide in finance for men. Women can read it too, obviously, but if you're a guy, a young guy, and you don't want to make mistakes in life financially, pick up this book. It's a great read. You get a lot of content, and the link will be in the description below. You can get the digital copy, the audiobook, or the paperback, which is what I have. And it's a good, hefty book. You get a lot of value and information for your money. So check those out, but most importantly, help World Class Bullshitters make a change in entertainment, because every day we're here trying to make it better for all of us, and because of all of you, it's happening. Thank you for watching, and I'll be back tomorrow with something epic. $1.3 billion. They must think we're stupid.